But you could, I know you could.
You probably considered that job easy after that. They need the airfield to be ready to present a challenge.
See if I can get them anyway, so. I haven't seen them in a couple of weeks. I like taking out, just taking this right over there.
We went over last night to Braddock. Spent some time with the Braddock. They're so fun.
That's what I like to get rid of these two clowns, like.
The new one's getting into Larson, who's selling, getting into bacon. She had a little pack of refrigerator.
Well, it's good they live close by. Where do they live?
Well, they stay with their mom out in Mexico. Brett has them every other weekend for Thursday, Monday. He actually takes them to school. So he gets to see them.
Where's he at?
He's on a long pond, right on a long pond.
Okay, okay.
It's just, his
I'm gonna wait right until it hits high noon.
Okay, and I think we'll have a minute.
Yeah. Good to see Jim Hamilton.
Yes, sir.
Haven't seen him in a long
You're
while.
on church Sunday
Yes,
night?
sir. I'm glad y'all can get together
Big
again.
crowd.
His son is supposed to be here.
What did they do?
That's Jim and his son is
He
John.
just does a minor study.
Well, his flight jacket and everything.
Yes, he does.
Did you have?
Thank you.
Have a song that's called.
Oh, well, thank you for doing
To
this.
it,
God.
it's pretty well controlled. Every now and then,
It's a privilege to have you here.
He might have a small part, 2 or 3 different ones like that. Have a small part, anyway, Gerald he just doesn't. It's more Bible study than a sermon, which is kind of hard to differentiate where he is, which one to call it, but he's good. That guy can go from 40, 45. He doesn't look at it, he just goes.
He came to the hospital and I told him they
I think we're ready.
All right.
I said, I am so impressed. Good afternoon. Appreciate y'all being here. We got a good crowd. Maybe we'll have some come in late too, like me. That's what I would do. I'm Brad Worthen, and I am, for some time, have been involved with the museum and helping to promote these programs, which up to this moment have been called Lunch and Learns. But there was no lunch involved. And Bob asked me the other day, is somebody gonna be serving food while I'm talking? And so just the other day, the museum decided to change the name to Noon Debrief. And so welcome to the first Noon Debrief. And looks like we got a good turnout. I hope they'll be as good as the Lunch and Learn programs, because I've really appreciated them so far. I think my favorite part of being involved, what little involvement I've had in the past, is just getting to meet the speakers and hear their stories, whether they're veterans, especially an honor to deal with the veterans, or historians or whatever. I always learn a great deal and feel privileged to get that education. That is particularly true in the case of our guest today, Robert Braddock. Bob Braddock is from Society Hill. He served in the United States Army for 20 years, retiring as a major, and served 2 tours in Vietnam, from August 67 to August 68, and then from July 69 to July 70. He was a pilot, mostly flying helicopters, particularly the Chinook. That is, for anybody, most of y'all probably know what that is, but for those that don't know, that's that big egg beater looking thing that can pick up anything. He flew a lot of missions, and among other things, he earned the Distinguished Flying Cross. And I hope all of y'all will join me in welcoming Major Braddock.
Thanks, Brad, and thanks to everyone who's associated with the South Carolina Museum, and particularly this one that we're dealing with, the military portion of it. It's a special honor for me to come and talk to you today because I view all of you as persons who have been associated with military people, either by friendship or by family, and you have a story to tell of your own, I'm sure, and I thank you for the opportunity to tell you mine. Mine sort of evolved over the years, but before I get into it, I do want to especially thank those of the museum who've helped me, Mr. Brad in particular, and Mr. Joe Long, who I met back in November. My son and his wife brought me here because I'd never been here before. And although the distance is short, I could have done it, but you know, we all have stuff that keeps us involved. And so they insisted I come visit, and they brought me here, and I enjoyed it thoroughly to the point that I want to become a part of it through telling my story. I appreciate your interest in what you think you might hear, and you have no idea what that might be, and all of us have a different story. Mine is not one of great glamour on the battlefield and suffering tremendously because of my service or any of that kind of thing. Heroic deeds you will not see except for the Distinguished Flying Cross. I had no involvement in life-threatening events along the way. Some did happen, but fortunately I was spared 100%. So I'll tell that story as I go along. And so to start as I normally did, I must tell you that when I retired from the Army, I was not prepared to do anything like this, had not thought of it. But I was a school teacher at a Christian school for 4 years, immediately upon retiring, and I had to quit that job because my son graduated from that Christian school. And I must confess that over the years I have been more involved in my own education than I was his. He and I had not talked about his education one bit. I had enrolled in a master's program for school administration this particular summer of 1979. That was the year he graduated. He had already graduated. I enrolled in school for that summer. As my custom was when I was a boy, I always got my homework time I got home from school. And so this was no exception. We had lunch and I went to the spare bedroom with the door open to do my homework. My son walked in. I looked up and it hit me. He and I had not talked about his education. I resigned from my school that day and started looking for a job that I could afford to support his education. Fortunately, he started himself through money that he had worked and earned. And then I picked him up after the first semester, and I repaid the money that he put for his own education. Anyway, so my life moved along, and then I became interested in the school that I had formerly taught at as a Christian school, dealing with students and young people. And so I became interested in the work of a young woman who was a 5th grade school teacher at Emmanuel Christian School in Hartsville. So because of the zeal that she showed in my service and which she showed with teaching young people history, math, reading, writing, and arithmetic, then I became interested in them. So this was developed for a 5th grade class. But you know, my life has been just at that level of interest in people. I'm still interested in young people, and of course adults as well. I have a son, he will be 63 next Wednesday. I'll be in Florida for his birthday. He has 2 sons, my grandsons. They're married and they have kids, my great-grandchildren. So I'm highly interested in people, and I'm involved in their lives and they in mine. But as we go through this today, I want to emphasize this middle phrase here is Vietnam as I lived it. This is my story. I did what the military sent me to do. I did it with fervor, and I did it with all that was in me, that all that I could do. I could do no more. So I do not apologize for not having such life-threatening events to tell you, but I am glad to tell you that this service was done with honor, and it's with great pleasure I get to speak to you today about it. First of all, I have it broken in segments, and the first segment is the country and its people. Then we'll talk a little bit about Vietnam. And my first tour of duty in Vietnam was at Bearcat, just east of Saigon. I spent my whole year there. I'm a Christian, and I feel that God has had his hand on my life. He directs my life. So if there's any problem with how I served or where I served, take it up with him. But that was my first year, and as God would have it, there was much need of Chinook helicopters in more difficult areas of the country at that time. As I was packing to come back to the United States, my company was packing to go to this area up here. And as I heard later on, they received lots of the kind of action that many people who served in Vietnam as crewmen of helicopters, that they endured. And my hat's off to what they did. My second year, I spent 6 months at Marble Mountain Air Facility, which is right on the coast. Da Nang is actually inward just a little ways. Marble Mountain is a Marine Corps facility right on the coast, and we were co-located with them. 6 months there as an aviation safety officer, and then 6 months at Phu Loy as company commander of a Chinook company. And I have a brother-in-law who has passed away. He was in Special Forces, and he was located right in this area, right here, and at Tay Ninh, which is not on this map, but it was just west of Cu Chi. I visited him there, and another place he served was somewhere right along here. I don't recall the name of it. It was an outpost, mostly manned by the Vietnamese army, and he was co-located with them. My hat's off to him. He endured the kind of service that I avoided, though not my own doing. So just for identification, all the yellow, of course, is Vietnam, with this being the divided line between North and South Vietnam. This is Laos, and of course this is Thailand, and we had an OV-1 airplane company operating out of there, and of course out of where I was here at Marble Mountain, and they did overflights of North Vietnam with the OV-1 airplane. That OV-1 airplane had the capability of side-looking airborne radar, SLAR they call it, as well as photographic capability, gathering information that could be used perhaps against North Vietnam. This is the Mekong River, and it shows the flatland of this area, the southern part of Vietnam. And that's typical of most of the country there. There were a couple of mountains, and I delivered goods to the tops of those mountains, but they were the exception. This is the coastline here, and this area is Vung Tau, which was a recreational area for the Vietnamese and an in-country recreation area for soldiers who could spend as much time there as their company allowed, maybe just 2 or 3 days at a time, but at least a brief break from the normal routine. Oh, that Vung Tau is also a place where the Mekong River flowed into the East China Sea. Because this is geared for 5th grade students, I have lots of slides of Vietnam, but I picked it out for them. And of course, we all were children once, and we have children. So this should be an interest to you as well. It shows the culture of this country. You notice that the boys here are in uniform, and there are no girls here, so I'm thinking this may be just a boys' school, or maybe the girls are separated to some other area. And I noticed some things. There's a thong type foot gear, and mostly that's the kind of foot gear. Only a couple are having hats here, all jeans and white shirts. So that shows some kind of progress in education. However, being an educator myself, there's been lots of discussion whether you should mix children who dress differently. Some can afford nice clothes, some can't, versus everyone wearing uniforms, which makes everyone the same. But you know, even wearing a uniform, you will not be the same. Those who have wealth will excel in some way or another compared to those who cannot afford anything better. So that's a part of the culture there. And here we see a man with a cart, and this is typical of hauling things in Vietnam. Loaded down for one thing, and a 2-wheel cart, but it is in a city. We see the people pretty nicely dressed, and of course they have curbs and they have pavement, paved streets. Probably a late model automobile for that day. Someone's advertising electricity, and I happen to see this cable here, as you can see it better with less magnification. It looked like it might be an electric bus that ran through town. That's just supposing. Here we see a 3-wheel truck, which is called a tuk-tuk, and it is also heavily loaded, typical of people not only just in Vietnam, but in the Far East in general. In fact, in Africa, I get pictures back from a missionary friend. It's the same there. Trucks are loaded down. And the conical shaped hat is typical of the Far East type of headgear. This, we'd call it a rice hat, a paddy hat, or something like that. But it has a name in Vietnam, and it's called a non-la or a non-toy. And different regions, even in Vietnam, have different names for that same type hat, highly used in that country. Here we see an outdoor market. I don't think any of us would want to shop there, but of course it's monsoon season, rain all over the place, and back on the one I just showed, you note that the roadway where that tuk-tuk was traveling, that was all wet. There's rain in the marshland beside the road, and comical shaped hats all over, and they have their wares there, and I just would not want to shop there, would you? I'm having to be careful transpassing through here. I don't step too well these days.
Good, you need me to help?
Oh, that's
Something out
okay.
of the way?
I'm
Let me-
going to
let me
manage
get-
it.
Let me get this cord out of the
Oh,
way.
that will help. Well, thanks a lot.
And that, though, you need, so.
Okay, thank you.
Watch
Thank you.
out.
Yes, sir. Okay, rice paddy, and that was a principal crop in Vietnam, and in fact, much of the Far East. And people out here on water buffalo, and we see some home or some kind of business structure in the background here. When I was stationed on Okinawa, I saw scenery just exactly like that. Notice that this man is herding water buffalo from behind. And when you're training children, and these are fifth graders I've been talking with, wouldn't the parents love to be able to teach your kids so that all they have to do is speak and the children head off in the right direction? They're just starting to leave the roadway, going to their destination over here, and they're just being very obedient. And would that our kids would learn the same kind of discipline in their lives. And this is a humorous slide here because the language is, the soldier murders the Vietnamese language, but so they murder ours as well. This is the word painting, but he calls it painting, and patch tires, advertising the work that they do for the military. If you have an IG inspection coming up, you could take your truck there, and for just a little bit of money, while you sit back, they'll paint your truck and get it ready for the IG inspection. And so they do the painting. Now here they've got it right, painting, and it's a tan-fat business. Painting and patch tires, that's all they do. And we see a few tires in the shop there. And ever being aware of young people. My son was in the first grade during my first year in Vietnam. And this young man has an inquisitive look on his face. He's not bashful, he's standing right beside the Jeep I'm sitting in, staring me right in the face. I don't know what his expectations were, but he gave me a nice shot there, and I appreciate it. He's wearing a nice hat. And this little boy, in the Chinook, we have a chin bubble, and I'm in that Chinook in the cockpit. The engines are running, and they're developing, even at an idle, pretty strong winds. There's probably whistling in his mouth, and blowing his hair aside, clutching his hat, and he is looking up. I don't know what his thoughts are. I couldn't take off with him standing there, but I got a nice shot anyway. Kids, still kids, this is the culture after all, and we're interested in it as adults and in children as well. And the boys, young boys did not wear pants. Those just seemed to be the thing. This is a garbage dump, and I'm driving in a Jeep, of course, and dragging along, but these are people searching through that dump. For what, I don't know, but it reminds us of the social problem we have today. Homeless people. They would be doing the same thing in our country. This is America. I thought this would be a nice shot to show where people lived, and an overhead shot showing this is probably a tributary of the Mekong River with little places into their homes where they can go in, and these are rice paddies here and down here. I got this shot because it shows a type of roof here, a thatched roof and a tile roof. And then we also see a pile of wood here. It looks like some logs, small logs, with some boards that might be used for kindling. I don't know what the purposes were. I don't know what this is. It might be a fire barrel. And this looks like some thatch. This looks like some new thatch and old thatch. And I just wondered if they may have been replacing some of the roof on this, and some debris fell on the ground. This is an area of squalor, and people live there. And in the background, we see a factory, I have no idea what was made there. There's smoke coming out of the chimney, and I don't know what degree of clean air they tried to produce, but I don't think the air was very clean from there. And I don't know, I don't recall if this was a monsoon season or not. This looks like an area that would be like this all the time. We have areas like that in our country as well. The kids love this scene because I challenged them to name all the types of transportation we see here. We see people on bicycles, we see people walking, there's a Jeep. We see the tuk-tuk, that's three-wheel truck, another one behind it. Modern day vans for that period, and a scooter, which has different kinds of names. It might be a Vespa for that day. And this lady here with her conical hat, and that's the way the women haul stuff, is by a bar across the shoulders with a load on each end. And it must be pretty well balanced, except the back load must be a little bit heavier than the front load, or else her balance beam is unbalanced. But anyway, she's enduring it, and I hope she didn't have too far to travel. And I would like to say, if you have a particular question of interest that pertains to what I'm speaking of right now, if you just get my attention, I'll make time for you. But this has been a long time ago, and I've been through this several times, but I remember this, and maybe not a whole lot more. So keep that in mind.
About what year is this?
Okay, this is 1967, 68. Most of the pictures that you're seeing here were taken on my first trip to Vietnam. I had other duties. My second trip, I took very few pictures. I'm not recalling, but maybe just a couple that I took that would be in this video here, this slideshow. But anyway, about 1967 or 68.
Where did they get drinking water?
Drinking water, I have no idea.
Yeah, you see it right there in front of the house. Just like the rest of the world, you boil your damn water. That's.
We got ours out of a trailer, and I'll show you a trailer in a couple of minutes. Potable or potable water and the trailer, that's where we got our drinking water from. This is a French rubber plantation, and all of this are rubber trees. And you know, the French got involved with Vietnam, and they had no success there either. And the Vietnamese people were upset, and I'm thinking it was because the French government probably siphoned off a lot of the wealth of Vietnam to France. And as a people, you know, they're still living in squalor and searching for food on mounds of waste material. But anyway, this looks like a pretty opulent lifestyle they're living here. And this is another shot. Of course, I'm flying along and it's a little bit blurred. I apologize. This is a runway here that extends on through the rubber plantation for ways. This looks like it might be a headquarters place. It's got one building with some little buildings surrounding it and out to the sides. And that might be a guest house, I don't know, for people coming there. Now I want to talk about the CH-47 Chinook helicopter. You know, this was a tool of my trade. It's like the soldier's rifle. I was an infantry soldier. I went through basic, like Army people do, and I went to OCS, got my commission at Infantry Officer Candidate School. So I'm highly interested in infantry because what happened if I flunked an annual physical? I'm an infantryman, so I had to maintain that quality as well. But anyway, I just wanted to get this training aid I have here. The Chinook is manufactured by the Boeing Company and is still in service today. I happen to be able to fly this machine starting at the beginning, the A model, my first tour in Vietnam. The A model was equipped with two engines made by Lycoming, and the horsepower for each engine, 4,750. So you see the horsepower with both engines operating together. The engines are gas turbine engines, which simply saying would be these are jet engines with rotors in the back, so that when the jet exhaust turns those rotors, and those rotors have a shaft that goes through the engine, through the center of it, to a gearbox on the front. Then that gearbox on the front has a shaft going to a combining transmission here. That combining transmission sends it a few feet to a rear transmission for this rotor, and along the top to a front transmission for this rotor. These are synchronized by this gearing and by the shaft, all working together. If a gear in a transmission happened to fail, just that one gear, then it would upset that continuity, and they would beat each other to death, and so we would crash. The helicopter is equipped with a hook, and the hook could hold 20,000 pounds. The A model struggled with that amount of weight. And you better consult your weight and balance, your altitude and weather conditions and all that before you try to carry 20,000 pounds, especially if you're going to the top of one of those mountains, which I recall the name of one was Noon Debrief. Can someone verify that for me? Noon Debrief was one of the mountains in the flatland region. And I did not know that all this was happening because I had safety officer duties for 6 months. When I took command of a C model company that had already been upgraded past the B model just in the time I've been to the States and back, upgraded to the C model. The only problem was the entire helicopter was upgraded except the engines. And my company was the only C model company in Vietnam, not the only, it was the first C model company that was upgraded to the new engine. Very powerful, but it had not been field tested. So I guess my company was field testing that C model Chinook. So when we went to pick up a load, we'd tell them, put two of them together, and we would haul 2 loads in one trip. Very powerful. I don't recall the horsepower of those engines, and it's even more powerful today. But we went into Cambodia when President Nixon ordered the U.S. into Cambodia. So we had to haul supplies, ammunition, services to the troops there as well as Vietnam. It happens that at the end of that foray into Cambodia, that this unit had an armored personnel carrier that had to be evacuated by air because it couldn't travel under its own power. So we went to evacuate that APC. So while my crew was coming up with it, picking up the load from the ground, they had not even got the load off the ground before one of the engines failed. And that rotor that's in the rear of the engine that I spoke about, it came off. There's more than one stage rotor there, as I remember. It came off, it went into this aft part here. It severed hydraulic lines. It runs by hydraulics. And so the airplane, the helicopter started settling back down onto the APC. So it finally settled and rolled over. Thankfully, all 5 crewmen escaped out of there, but some with injuries. And I went to visit them, and they were all secure in a hospital by the time I got here. But anyway, that was the only helicopter I lost, and that was by faulty engine. I don't know what we did after then. We certainly didn't ground these Chinooks. I mean, I don't know behind the scenes what was done to correct that problem, but we continued operating the C model Chinook. And I felt by this helicopter as I feel about the M1 rifle, which is one I was trained with, and the BAR. I was a good BAR man. Changing magazines is important. I could change magazines very quickly. You got to. The enemy is still coming. But anyway, I have high regard for this helicopter, and I'm glad it's still around as I'm still around. Oh, it's working, I'm not. I was not a hot dog pilot because the helicopter is just like us. We have an envelope that we can operate in. We know what our limitations are, and we have to judge what we do by those limitations. And let me tell you, my limitations are growing as the years go by, maybe the days. But anyway, in those days I was younger, and I did like to sometimes push the helicopter to the limit, not in an unsafe way, because I'm a school-trained safety officer. I can't do that kind of thing, although it's fun. Oops, went the wrong way. This is a Chinook helicopter in a landing mode where one is having fun. That fun would be, our company was located right near the revetment, the sandbag exterior, the protection to our unit. And it has a road just inside that sandbag protected barrier. I love to just cross that road just at the right height, just a tad fast, and I could grease the rear wheels on the ground before any of the crewmen knew it. They loved for me to come in and let them try to tell when we're on the ground. I could sense it myself, and you have to be very careful on the controls. And it's very near in a stopping attitude, because look at all this surface underneath that's facing the wind. Plus, the way you stop this helicopter from the forward roll in this attitude is you increase the power. Because you notice the tilt of these blades, they're saying, whoa, whoa. I mean, if you put enough power in, you're going to take off backwards. You can tell that. So, first of all, grease it on the helipad, not a runway, just a helipad, and then add a little more power. It comes to a stop. When it comes to a stop, you put on the toe brakes for these rear wheels here, and the toe brakes brings you to a halt, and you gently let the front wheels down. You unlock these back wheels. They're steerable then, and you didn't have a little dial. You just steer yourself to parking and unload. Your day is done. So, wasn't that fun? I just relived it all over again. The types of units supported and the missions flown. There was a time when I gave this to the 5th grade. I showed a picture of every airplane and helicopter that we used in Vietnam, including, I don't recall the military designation, but the Caribou airplane. When I went through flight school, that's what the Army was flying, was the Caribou. The Air Force got jealous. We may have some Air Force people in here, sorry. But they took over our airplane. They said, we deserve that type of airplane, wouldn't let us have it. But anyway, a little bit of inter-service rivalry, and that's okay too. Types of missions flown. Okay, how am I doing on time? Okay, I've got to wrap this up pretty quickly. Okay, these are rubber fuel bladders. Each bladder contains 250 gallons of fuel. That's only about 4,000 pounds. A model Chinook could easily carry that. The C model, we could max out at 20,000 pounds. I show this because it just shows the capability of not only the helicopter, but the pilot. This is taken in Afghanistan, and there's actually a rescue going on. They're loading on someone who's been injured. They're on a mountaintop. These are mountains around it, valley down below. You note that the cockpit is suspended out over nothingness and maybe trees. Oh boy, the control touch you need to control the helicopter in a steady position for this type of thing to go on. Much credit to the training of our helicopter crewmen.
Sir, the desk model has three
Yes.
landing gear. When did the Chinook move to 4 landing gear?
Okay, now this is a distinction between a Marine helicopter, the CH-46, and the Army helicopter, CH-47.
Right.
The Marine helicopter has the single gear in the front. It's configured much like this, and you could easily mistake it, but the Marine helicopter has its engines inboard, and the Chinook has them outboard.
Right, but your model over there has,
Two.
it looks like it has 3 landing gear. Just one.
Oh, landing gear. No, it has 4. It has 2 in front and 2 in the back.
Yes, I saw it wrong, sorry.
That's okay. When I was stationed at Marble Mountain Air Facility, I was with a battalion headquarters, an Army battalion, and this battalion had several different types of aircraft. It had the UH-1 Fury, and it had the OB-1 airplane that made those flights over North Vietnam, and it had two airplane companies, the O-1 Bird Dog. And I walked over because of my interest in the CH-46 next door to a Marine Corps unit, and I went aboard their helicopter. So I appreciate that remark, but there is that distinction. Any other questions right now? This is where the wrong plow is being used, and we have a gentleman here who will be speaking in March, and he's here today to see what goes on during this. And he's doing a lot of work so far as gathering together things to be learned and remembered about Vietnam. But you see this truck here, these crossways in the road, and it's monsoon season. This is wet and muddy, and trees are all piled up where the wrong plow, and I can't tell you what it looks like, because some of these machines look like tanks, but they may be the wrong plow. I never learned the difference. At that time, I didn't care. Now I'd like to know. But anyway, there's one of those vehicles right there, because these people do have to have security, of course. So I would expect to see some type of protective equipment like a tank or armored personnel carrier or whatever. But we service them, and we have to haul lunch to them and ammunition for their own defense, maybe repair parts for the wrong plow, whatever. And here's another shot, and we're parked in between the mounds of trees that are piled up there, still running, hopefully clearing all the branches. We also had recovered downed helicopters, and of course the Huey would be the one that we would recover. This is the only one that I ever personally had as one of my missions, was to recover it, and we're being gassed up in the background by a fuel truck there. And speaking of fuel, the Chinook helicopter, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, holds 8,000 pounds of JP4 gasoline, and that 4,000 pounds along each side. You notice that the Chinook looks like it's gained weight around the middle from front to rear. None of us look like that, of course, but that's the fuel pods. And it has pumps inside the tank to pump fuel from one tank to another. 8,000 pounds of fuel. The range of that is on that little placard I have at the Chinook. The range, I think, was 400 miles. I'm not sure that's what it would be today with current engines, and current speeds that it's operated at. Okay, the same helicopter slung underneath under the Chinook. I might just tell you I'm using more time than I intended. I gotta save question time. But anyway, the M model Chinook, the one that went in Pakistan after the bad guy, it has a 3-point sling system, and it has much more capability. This load here, we had to fly at a certain speed and do maneuvers very carefully. If we got this helicopter oscillating underneath, we could bring ourselves down. And I think that happened once in Vietnam. I only heard about it. I don't have any personal information of it, but it was a danger. This is an outpost, and the young people love to guess, okay, this compound has all these sandbags around it. What if the enemy were to attack it? From which direction would the enemy come? Would they come through the trees and maybe come underwater through this pond that goes back here somewhere? And how would we defend against that? Or maybe they'd just come here during the daytime through stealth and convince the Vietnamese, okay, let us stay here today. And the convincing would be like, will you please let us? It'd be, can we stay with you today or tonight? And they could put in 2 or 3 squads of people, and they could just make a frontal attack right across where it's easier to travel. You don't have to worry about water gear or getting your ammunition wet or anything. Or you just come down across here. Anyway, they enjoyed that for a while. You notice the Jeep is entering the compound, a UH-1 Huey down there. Notice all the wetlands and rice paddies around. There's a home out there. This dismays me as an infantry soldier because these people are in a combat zone. And first of all, they're subjecting themselves to getting sunburned. That's just as effective as taking a man off the line as it does a punji steak or an injury, a weapon fired at them or whatever. This man is wearing boots. This man is just in clogs. And that soldier is fully dressed. I'm just dismayed by it, really. And here's a bunker here. There's some civilians in this, some kind of village maybe. This guy is wearing his helmet. I give him credit for that. I might say, I joined the Army as a volunteer soldier, regular Army. When I got my commission, it was in the U.S. Army Reserve with immediate call to active duty. So I remained on active duty to finish out 20 years. But I never shrank back from being a volunteer soldier, regular Army. That's the only way I would have it. Okay, here's another outpost. I'm thinking that they may have something to do with guarding whether or not the Viet Cong or the NVA use this river as transportation. There are other ways of preventing that, but certainly having someone on the ground, on the spot, keeping an eye on it would be one means. Maybe they get patrols out here, down there, see what's going on. I have no idea. And this is what the Navy called a riverine force. And we would supply the riverine force. And I guess they were patrolling the waters for that same reason, to deny it as a means of transportation. But they had a helipad, but we had to land across it like this. That's the closest we were coming to being suspended out over something that you could not focus on. You're over moving water. And if you picked up a little twig, well, it's floating and you lose sight of it. So I got so much Army experience. Later on, I was the aviation advisor to the Ohio National Guard. That's after Vietnam was over, and I was ready to go back in Ohio, and the Army quit, so I continued until I retired as that advisor. It happened that the Army started getting rid of some of the equipment it no longer needed, and gave the state of Ohio a Chinook helicopter. And I was ordered, along with a National Guard counterpart, to go to Cumberland Army Depot, who overhauled Chinooks, to pick up our Chinook, which had just been freshly overhauled. And so I learned while there that the Army developed a system where to suspend a helicopter over a fixed place, you use infrared to paint a spot where you're going to hover over. You just hover there, and I guess you press the button, say paint, and you paint the spot with the infrared, then you lock on that spot, and then it holds you right there. So you're verifying that for me? Or you're
No,
just
I can only
acknowledging?
talk about electronics.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, good, thanks. Okay, here we're picking up, we did a lot of movement of artillery, picking up the gun, 105 millimeter howitzer, and a bag of ammunition, and we call this a piggyback load. At the outset, this gun is some distance away from the bag. And so we pick up the gun first, and leaving slack in the line, we move them to hover directly over the bag, and we have a flight engineer in the center of the helicopter looking through this hole, and he guides the pilot. When we get centered over it, then we go up and away. I apologize for the pictures here because they are old. Even when I put this together for that elementary school, they were old. But this is airborne, what it looks like. We could only travel about 70 knots with a load like this. And this is headed home, and I can see it pretty well here, but it's more difficult to see in the background. But yeah, there it is. I was looking up here in the sky. And this is the Mekong River, east of Saigon, and there's Bearcat. And there's an access road. I can't tell the beginning of it, but this is the access road to our Bearcat, and that's what it looks like in its entirety from the air. And this is where my company was located. This is the first year we're talking about. These darker tents belong to our company, and my tent was the third one in this location right here. And this long building here is our dining facility. We call it mess hall in that day. And this was an Army Connex container, which is a cube metal container used for shipping stuff overseas. We have a lot of those that we ship our company over with. And so they were used then to put people in as safety against rocket and mortar attack. And of course, they'll be mounted up with earth on the outside and on the inside, outside and top by the inside. And so that's where we were located right there. And I'm thinking, I don't remember if this was our helipad or this. I don't recall, I'm sorry. It could be here, because here's the perimeter of our company, and there was a road, and I used to land right across that road. I just don't remember walking that far. This is our helipad here. This is the first time I noticed this. These are revetments which we part the Chinook between to protect it from rocket and mortar attack. That revetment was simply built.
Bob, we've only got about 9 minutes
9
left.
minutes. Okay, let me hurry through this then.
And I hope you'll tell us the story of how you
Okay, I will.
received the Distinguished Flying Cross. I know you don't like to brag.
Yes, I don't. Okay, rest and relaxation. Went to Hawaii, both trips to Vietnam. I met my wife and my son. My son was first grade, the first time over, third grade, the second time over. I wouldn't go without him. And That's a view out of our hotel window. That's my wife, my son, first grader. When I showed this, he said, "Dad, that looks so dorky. High socks and loafers." My wife and I, we had 59 years and 8 months together. She passed away 5 years ago. I miss her terribly. Anyway, downtown Honolulu, shot of some scenic place we were at. We went to SeaWorld, of the Pacific, I believe it's called. A shot of me and Derek, a shot of Brenda and Derek, and we went out to see the memorial there. That's a very moving experience, all those names. Oil coming up from that, still being collected today. We're not collecting that time. Where I live, that's initial days when we moved in. And this is that revetment I was talking about, the Connex container. We had a rocket attack. We rushed in there. He was too tall and didn't lean. It's dark. It's nighttime. He cracked his face right here, and he had to be evacuated. That's Thurgood, Captain Thurgood. You notice how we improved our facilities. Got us up out of the water, banana trees, butt cans, and all kinds of good stuff. This monkey is McGee. He belonged to another soldier. There are four of us in the same tent. That's a GP medium. And Captain Thurgood, he's the one I just showed you a picture of. He's in this front 1/4 of the tent. I'm in the back 4th, and 2 other fellows on the other side. McGee is inspecting my ears, and the kids got a kick out of that. I encourage them to clean their ears. Okay, this is my inside. I have a TV, I have a desk, I have a wall locker, and one that I was issued and one that I made. I have a desk. I'm a captain at this time, and I have all the niceties at home. I bought my chair on a local market. I have a stereo system, a seat that I made out of condemned seating out of a Chinook, the seat and the back seat. And I've got boards, and I'm sitting on my footlocker for the seat and leaning back against the board with that. My off-duty job was assistant operations officer, making assignment to airplane and helicopter crew. And there's our parking before we got the revetments. You saw rain cloud in the background, and that's a shot of me. I'm ready for war. I'm wearing the regular Army fatigue uniform. The first year, we did not have fire protection, except for, they told us that the starch in the uniform would provide some level. I don't know if I ever believed that. I received 1 shot here, and I'm a major this time. I'm a lot more solemn looking than you saw just a couple of seconds ago. I've got more responsibility. I'm wearing the green tab of a leader, and I took that seriously. That did no damage except that. And I don't know if the maintenance crew found out where it came out at. There's a lot of skin there. And I'm a senior Army aviator. The star means over 2,500 flying hours, qualified in airplane, or I should say rotary wing and fixed wing aircraft. Estimate qualified in both. And this is the Distinguished Flying Cross. One of the missions I was on, I had sent out 4 helicopters on a particular mission, and this mission happened to be in Cambodia, and it was to resupply a unit that had been attacked at night, and they ran low on ammunition, and we were resupplying them during the daytime. And so, of course, it's monsoon season, and darkness is coming because they're not through with the job, and they came home. And I never got on them about that, because these are air crewmen. They know when they are at their limit, and these are bad conditions approaching. So I said nothing except, let's get 4 crews together, and I'll be the mission leader. So we got our crews together, and we went out. For the earlier crew to get in, trees in Cambodia had to be blown down so that they'd have room to get in. So now this is the situation we're facing. I don't even remember how we got there, how we navigated there. How would I get there today? Well, GPS, I guess. But anyway, we went there. We had to go to the ammunition depot and load up with ammunition, and 4 of us worked, I think it was 3 hours or so, to haul all the ammunition to that unit, load after load. Raining, darkness. We could not turn on the landing light because that would give the enemy an aiming point. So we completed our mission. Now it's time to go home. And how do we get home now? I don't know how we got there, so how do I now know how we got home, except that thanks to the Air Force, they had the airborne radar for service. And we contacted the Air Force, just like an in-flight service, and they put us on radar and guided us back to our location, which the weather was adequate so that we could descend out of the clouds and land at home. And sandwiches and milk and coffee were available for the crew on our return. Do I have any time for questions?
Anybody have some questions?
Please.
We admit to leave more time, I'm sorry, but he's got a lot of stories to tell.
Okay, that's resupply mission, was that in the early, deployment?
Tour. The early tour in Vietnam? No. I did a similar mission in Vietnam on my first tour. By the way, that's called a tactical emergency. I could not have chosen to not fly that mission. When it's called a tactical emergency, we must fly, no matter the conditions.
Okay, so 1968.
So this is either 68 or 69.
Okay, 68, we were in Cambodia on Operation Gainesville.
Okay.
You probably brought us a lot of garbage.
Okay, could be, could be.
Now, was that with the Hueys or Chinook?
I'm sorry.
Was that with the Hueys, you talk about 4-ship thing, with Hueys or Chinook?
Chinook.
Chinook.
Yes, once I got to Vietnam, when I was the aviation safety officer for that battalion up at Marble Mountain, then I had to fly to outlying units to give safety meetings and briefings. And so that was my mode of transportation then. Usually me and the battalion commander would go out to the company because he would need to visit as a battalion commander as well. So we usually fly together in a Huey, and I've got a UH-1D model. And that's the only, I went to school for helicopters after I was an airplane pilot. But once I qualified with OH-13, I accumulated a few more hours. I accumulated a few more with UH-1 Huey, but I don't have a lot of time in it. Most of my time is in the Bird Dog airplane and the U-6 Beaver for airplane time. But in the Chinook, I've got 1,300 plus combat hours in the Chinook. I've only got just a few more hours altogether because those were training at Fort Benning, Georgia in the Chinook and route to Vietnam, then back for schooling. Okay, I don't get my flying time in the States in a Chinook. I get it in an airplane at Fort Benning. And then back to Vietnam. I'm in school for aviation safety. I'm a safety officer, so most of my Chinook time is combat time.
Well, we're at the time to end, but I'll bet that Bob would be willing to stick around to answer some questions after we end.
I do have a commitment later on in the day, but I do have time for a while.
And I apologize for cutting you off.
That's
because
okay.
I know you got a lot of things to tell. Thank you all for coming today. In 2 weeks, we'll have Ron Hagel, 2 weeks from today, who will be talking about his job as an intelligence officer in Vietnam, and hope y'all will come out for that too. Thank you, Bob.
You can leave, but I do
Here's your
want to
gift.
say this. This was on the podium, and I did not think that it would be mine, And I need to have a little more room there for my mouse and for my laptop, and I was told that this is mine. And I said, well, when can I open it? He said, you can open it now. I didn't want to do that now. I'm inquisitive about what's in there, and I want you to know as well, because this is what these people did for me. And I want you to know that. So I want you to witness as I open this, and I want to say thank you. 2 tickets to the museum that will be used again. Thank you. And it's heavy, I have to tell you. And I do not accept gifts really that well. A card. And it's a desk weight. I still have a desk at home. It's a picture of the museum against what looks like a marble, heavy base.
I don't know, because I didn't wrap it. I believe it comes from the State Museum gift shop. Copper stamping made from original dome materials removed from the historic South Carolina State House in Columbia. That's the State House.
Yes, the State House.
That ought to hold some papers down.